Fujimoto, the author of Chainsaw Man, Fire Punch, Goodbye Eri, and Look Back, ate his pet. He confirmed with a statement. And when I found out about this today, I was like, this panel makes just so much more sense now. The fact that Denji's answer to Makima at the end of part 1 of Chainsaw Man was to literally put her into pieces and then eat her out of love just says so much now when we saw this statement come out. Now, to clarify a few things, I did just find out about this today, and I know many of you guys probably watching this video, this is probably the first time that you're hearing about it. But if you have already heard about this, the reason for that is because this is technically a year old. The information here came out with a one-shot collection when Fujimoto was releasing basically Look Back and Goodbye Eri in a collection in Japan, and when that got released, you know, the statement of, for instance, this came alongside of it. So yes, the information here technically is a year old, but I know there is a lot of people out there that are unaware of this, have never seen this, and this is just going to be some mind-blowing stuff, because I found out about it today, and I was just like, huh, this really just makes me reimagine certain events in Chainsaw Man in a different light. Like, I now see this Makima scene in such a different way, thanks to the statement that Fujimoto made with this, you know, little statement here. So let's read this. Let's just dive headfirst into it before I go any further and I talk about other little details. So, yeah. Until age 24 or so, I lived with my girlfriend in a 15,000 yen apartment in Yamagata. The fact that Fujimoto has a girlfriend, that honestly is just, that really surprises me. But anyways, the people around us were kind and would give us fruits and vegetables, so while we didn't have much, I think we ate a well-balanced diet. Even though we were poor, we had a pet Japanese rice fish. I found it dead one summer. I went to toss its body into the trash like in Parasite. The fact that this man's first thought of throwing away a body was an image from Parasite in his mind is absolute insanity. It really gives us just so much more to Fujimoto's mindset of how he operates and why he writes chapters the way he does. And reading this statement, honestly, is already feeling like it's a Chainsaw Man chapter. That's just how wild it seems. But let's carry on. But my girlfriend said she wanted me to bury it, so off I went to the park alone. I tried to bury it under this big tree, but the ground was too hard. My hands got all dirty, and I had no hold to show for my effort. Out of options, I figured I would pretend I had buried the fish and left it lying there on top of the ground. As I watched it for a while, most likely a few hours, ants found the body and began trying to carry it away. I'm not sure what came over me, but in that moment, love for that pet fish welled within me for the first time. I brushed the ants away, and then I ate it. There's a lot to really unpackage from that one. But, so basically, this dead fish that's been dead pretty much all day, probably starting to stink thanks to the summer heat, because obviously it's in the middle of the summer, sitting out under a tree and all that on the dirt, and then ants getting on it. Fujimoto brushes the ants off, and then I'm assuming, he doesn't say he preps it or anything. I'm assuming he just straight up eats it. And so, if he really just starts biting into the fish and eating it, that's gross, man. That's really gross. It really gives us a lot more details to how something like this was made. Like, it really does. Like, how did Fire Punch come to be? Well, you can look at this statement, and it really just says everything you need to know. But, let's carry on. The next day, I had an upset stomach. No shit. And when my girlfriend suggested it was something I'd eaten, I came up with some lie to cover up the fact I'd eaten our pet fish. I had people get mad at me many times throughout my life, and when I'm scared of that, the lies just spill out. So he's like a pathological liar. Most of the time, I get caught in them, but that time, I didn't. That brings us to now. The memory of lying to my girlfriend is far stronger than the guilt of eating our pet fish. Please allow me to confess my sin here. Once again, more stuff to unpackage here. So, the fact of the matter is that next day his stomach was upset, so it does clarify that most likely the fish was really starting to get rotten, you know, because he ate it off the ground, it was probably starting to stink, and you shouldn't really eat raw fish like that, so, yeah, anyways, and when my girlfriend suggested it was something I'd eaten, you know, he started to lie, and this implies that this man, he's more upset about lying about the pet fish than actually eating the pet fish, which, once again, Fujimoto, man, what a creature. Like, he's legitimately a creature. And, you know, as much as this seems very depraved or just, like, jaw-dropping or disgusting, whatever words you want to kind of associate with Fujimoto in this, it is always interesting just seeing the psyche of an author, because it really just gives us so much more details to how we came to certain conclusions within a story, and now seeing a little bit of this detail of Fujimoto's life, it does make me look at this YouTube video in a different light as well. So if you don't know what this is a pretty old video as well, came back out in like 2021, I don't know how old it really is, I always thought this was kind of fake, but now seeing the statement and now this, I'm starting to believe this is actually real, and basically Fujimoto believes he could fly, and I'll play the video. You can just see it for yourself. He legitimately thinks he can, like, levitate or fly, or he tries to levitate and fly. Obviously, we know how that turned out, but the fact that he tried this to begin with says enough about, like I said, his mindset. So now that we got this out of the way, and we now see Fujimoto for who he really is, it does give us just so much more context to how he got to this point with Denji and Makima at the end of Part 1 Chainsaw Man. But on top of that, I feel like a lot of people, after finding out this information, is going to look at Fujimoto in a very different light. And as much as people are probably going to say he's disgusting, depraved, whatever it might be, at the end of the day, it's still fascinating just seeing the inner workings of someone's mind, because this is something I love to do in the past with, like, Tokyo Ghoul. With the author Ashita Sui, when he was writing Tokyo Ghoul, writing Kaneki Ken, and all the amazing characters within that story, you know, you could see Ashita's personality blend into the, you know, the story of TG. The same could be said for Yoshihiro Togashi, the individual that writes Hunter x Hunter, and, I mean, knowing how he is as a person, like, he's a hermit, you know, he's always kind of, like, not like Shonen Jump and all that, and he doesn't take help or whatever, you know, a lot of his personality does bleed into his work. And so seeing this about Fujimoto, you could kind of see now the DNA of all these stories and why they're just so dark or messed up or unhinged is because of the author himself. Now, one thing I do want to point out, though, before I go any further, is that now that we know a little bit more about his psyche, there is something we can all admit. That Fujimoto really is quite an interesting author, because usually when someone writes a story, they just have one successful story, and then that's it. Like, if they go on to try to make another story, they can't be successful anymore. It's not a banger, so to speak. And the fact that he went to write Fire Punch, and it was semi-successful, to writing Chainsaw Man, and then, like, Goodbye Eri and Look Back, and all these stories are fundamentally very different from each other, and they don't have the exact same story, different themes, etc., but you can still feel the presence and essence and DNA of Fujimoto throughout all of these stories. It's something that I really appreciate, and it shows just the talent and skill level that he is as an author. But overall, though, this is legitimately wild stuff that we found out earlier today. The fact that he referenced Parasite for the first thing to do when he was getting rid of, like, a body of a fish, to, you know, lying to his girlfriend, and he's a pathological liar. There's so many things here, and I mean, at the end of the day, everything that we got with this statement could just be what that is. It could be a straight up lie from him. It could be him being a pathological liar, and that's the whole point of it, just to get people shocked or be like, huh, really? So, I don't know, there's a lot of ways to take this, but yeah, I thought this is very fascinating. I love finding out more about authors, and I know that, like I said, this isn't like brand new news or anything, but I know there's probably a lot of people that have never heard of this, and I wanted to share it with all of you guys. But with that being said, though, thank you so much for watching. Be safe, stay healthy, and I love you guys. Chibi out.